to order. It is good to see everyone following our July vacation, our break away from our commission work. I do want to just make a couple acknowledgments. Number one, again, as a reminder, this is an all-volunteer commission that works with our colleagues on city staff to expand and improve upon our city's bicycle pedestrian infrastructure, working every day to expand and improve upon that connectivity and safety for all of our fellow colleagues and friends and families making their way across the city. I do also want to acknowledge that we are coming back into session as a commission following a sad and tragic cyclist incident yesterday. I think it was Sunday afternoon. A cyclist was hit by a motor vehicle at East Lane Street and North Person Street. I believe the cyclist was taken to a hospital with some serious injuries. I have no other information about this at this time. I don't know if our colleagues on city staff happen to, but I just think it's worth acknowledging here again the importance of what we're trying to do, right, with our colleagues on city staff, with our colleagues out here in just across the city, trying to improve upon this infrastructure to make it safer for everybody navigating across the city. So. With that, I'd like to move forward with, introductions. My name is Nick Neptune, Chair of the Commission. We'll proceed to my left.
Joe Caruso, Vice Chair and Chair of the Policy Committee.
Brian Thomas, Outreach Committee.
Jeronica Goodwin.
Alex Rittenberry in the Policy Committee.
Kari Barsonas, also on the Policy Committee.
Tammy Stern in the Planning Committee.
Pierre Tong, Planning Committee. Mary Jo Gallenbeck, Planning Committee.
William Smith, Outreach Committee.
Elizabeth Alley, Policy Committee.
Celeste Bravo Taylor, Planning Committee.
Staff?
Barbara Godwin, Transportation Staff.
Will Shoemaker, Transportation Staff.
Thank you.
And a welcome back, Will.
Oh.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Up next, we'll have an approval of our minutes. I trust our colleagues on the commission have had a chance to review our minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve? Oh?
Not a motion, but a question about the minutes.
Okay.
An item here. So it reads that at our July meeting, an update was provided on the St. Mary Street Bikeway, among others, and that construction was scheduled for summer 2024. And I'm just curious if, apparently we're eliminating the bike lane on the east side of St. Mary's and adding some additional parking. And was that part of the update? Because that's something that's going before the City Council tomorrow in their consent agenda. So usually we get an opportunity to review implementation plans before they're finalized, and I'm just curious if we had that opportunity here.
So the St. Mary's project is being done as part of the city's resurfacing program. The Planning Committee reviewed St. Mary's Street and Donald Ross Drive earlier this year. The decision was made to reroute a portion of the bikeway that was planned along St. Mary's Street to the east, into a neighborhood bikeway to connect into Boylan Avenue. And the parking would be retained along the stretch of that first block of St. Mary's Street, between Peace Street and Brooklyn Drive.
Okay.
I have a comment. And it's in the section 7, the general board comments. 1, 2, 3, 4th, one down, with starts with Mr. Caruso. And it highlights a point that I wanted to make in regards to words matter. The report from the media on the bicyclist headline says a bicyclist was hit by a car. And that narrative really takes off the responsibility of drivers. I'd like it if we refer to the responsible party in our minutes to reflect the person who caused the impact is a driver and not a car. And I stress this because over the weekend, Safe Routes to School, Wake County participated at the Marbles Kickoff to Kindergarten event. And we did a pop-up crosswalk to enable the children to practice using a crosswalk. And initially, we started out with this use of the word cars. If you look at cars, there's a historic content to it, but which I won't dive into, but you can find online. I purposefully asked the team to start referring to the people who were holding up the car props, to the children to look at the drivers and not the cars. And what I experienced was one time when the person said, look at the cars, the child actually looks at the car prop. And I was doing everything I could to have the child look and make eye contact with me, who was the driver, role-playing with the car. And the point of the matter is that we're trying to engage the public who are in use of this public space to see each other as humans, as persons. And if you refer to a driver as just the car, it takes the responsibility off of the driver, and that was the inanimate object's responsibility. The children eventually started looking at the role-playing drivers, and were making eye contact with them as they practiced crossing the road. The cars were stopped, they were making waving signals, and the drivers were waving back to them in this exercise. I feel it's really important that we should all have a considered effort to identify the people who are involved in these collisions and crashes. Thank you.
So, Ms. Gallenbeck, just so I'm clear, you would like for our minutes to be amended to read I guess, the citizen here, as an example, the citizens are walking, fell into the roadway, being struck by a driver.
Correct.
Yeah.
If that's possible, I would like that word vehicle to be changed by the word driver.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck.
And I don't know if Mr. Caruso referred to it as a vehicle. I just think this is a poignant time to use a reference for why we want to change.
Thank you.
Just before we leave that topic, is it possible for us to get a copy of the police report from yesterday's incident? Presumably there is such, and if that was shared with with BPAC, I think maybe, there may be opportunities to learn things there and opportunities for improvement. Is that something that we can share with the commission?
So it's not available as of yet. It usually takes about a week before it comes
Yeah,
access.
but I mean, when it's available. So.
We can check, make sure that there isn't anything that's we'll make sure that we can share that with the public. I'm not sure what the rules are with police and crash reports, but we'll make a note, and if possible, we'll share.
I think anytime there's an incident involving a pedestrian or a cyclist, we ought to be looking closer at it.
There'll be lots of them.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Is there a motion to approve our minutes with the amendment to the language around vehicles, just amended to driver?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes have been passed with the amendment to the language
Thank you
around
very much.
vehicles and drivers. Up next, we will make time for public comment. Do we have any colleagues from the public here to make public comment? If you'll move forward to the podium, please. If you'll share your name, your address, and you'll have...
I don't think we have to state our address anymore, just our name and public comment periods.
Is that right? Okay. Just name and 3 minutes for public comment. Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck.
My name is Athena Wallen. I do live on Brookside Drive, and I think that's important because I've been talking to the city a lot about it, and this is a continuation of it. I have so much to say and not a whole lot of time to say it, so I have thoughts and opinions on why we need to readdress the roundabout that is intended to go at the Automotive Way, formerly Circus Restaurant location, in concern about how it is going to create issues with me not being able to click things. Oh dear. I'm worried that the traffic going from Wake Forest and free-flowing onto Brookside Drive as a right side turn, there are complications for pedestrians and cyclists with that parking lot, the gas station, just in general, really hectic area. And so I just want to have a request to let's bring in all the information about this roundabout that we can, so we can figure out if there are some small changes we can make for better visibility for pedestrians and cyclists. I was going to just focus on talking about that, but it's really hard when Brookside is a complete street. It's not just a roundabout, it's not just a parking proposal, and this 1 mile stretch of road is Brookside Drive, and it changes in all different ways in regards to who can use it, where they are supposed to be while using it, whether or not there's parking, whether or not there are bike lanes, whether or not there are lights. So I want us to reframe our way of thinking about Brookside. And anytime I say, hi, I'm from Brookside Drive, it's because this entire area is under a lot of development in lots of different ways. And this is a section of Raleigh that sees all different types of modalities, all different types of sizes, all different types of days, for all different types of weather conditions, regardless of what is marked on that road. And we have a school, and we have upcoming construction, redirecting traffic at any given week, month. From May, it could be one way to get to Conn Elementary, and then you break for school and come back in September, and it's a different way. So my point is that we need to have intentional communication at every turn for our drivers in order to protect anybody who is not in a car. Because if we continue to go through and make all the changes that we need, thinking only how to get cars from point A to point B, we are missing so much, including this 1 mile stretch of Brookside Drive, which is by all measures of my heart, a really fascinating opportunity for Raleigh to invest in regards to education and in regards to realizing the potential that the city has already. With all that ramble, I don't know how much time I have.
Well, I think, Ms. Wallen, you've got about 10 more seconds.
That's unfortunate.
But
I just wanted to say, like, I sent you a draft of a document that goes through. The parking proposal itself is flawed because it is inherently car-centric, because it goes through the parking division, which, as an umbrellaed department of the transportation whole, it goes through a completely different procedure to implement their projects. So when parking projects are projected and said to, do this thing for cars, there is no more opportunity for cyclists, pedestrians, one-wheelers, cats, dogs, whoever. We lose that right to that road because no longer is that conversation about transportation, it's about parking. So there's a flawed headbutting system going on here, and I kind of outlined it with this Brookside proposal, kind of harshly. Sorry, it's a draft, so things are kind of messy and hard to read because I didn't, whatever. And now I'm getting nervous. But it kind of breaks down who was reached out to and who should have been reached out to. For instance, homeowners were only reached out to, but Brookside Drive has low-income housing that's just a block north of this proposal, and nobody from that complex likely doesn't even know that a roundabout is coming. So our way of communicating to our people is flawed, and we need to fix it. Because we keep proceeding and favoring that car-centric approach. I did go through and see what actions the Department of Transportation is going to request for approval, and broke it down between what is currently marked as all-day parking, what will be changed, and then my suggestion, the simplest thing, as like an act of good faith towards multimodal something, is to acknowledge this disparity that Department or the transportation department ultimately doesn't have additional involvement with parking projects in regards to pedestrians and bicyclists. So we need to fix that. And then when more projects or more proposals like this get put out, we need to reconsider them with that frame of pedestrian and cyclist equity and equitable use of that roadway. So with the Brookside proposal, I just nixed 3 things that I don't even understand why they would have changed to begin with, but it kind of demonstrates how little information we pass on to department. I want to talk so much more, so.
Well, Ms. Wallen, thank you for
Thank you.
being here tonight. And if you'll just stay with us at the podium, I imagine we'll have colleagues in the commission with a comment, and I'd love to hear a response from colleagues on city staff. From the commission.
Here, here.
We have reviewed this street. Where did, and some of the parking proposals and had exactly those same thoughts. And I thought we left it at, it's not really a city, like the, I'm not sure where we left it. And
Left in parking, that we didn't have, transportation was not implementing it, the parking division was implementing it. That's where I remember it being ended.
it's unclear to me what plan we landed on and if anything is being implemented at any point in time or if we get another review of this project before that happens.
So this item went before City Council back in June, and they referred it to Transportation and Transit Committee, which it will be reviewed at Transportation and Transit Committee on Thursday.
Oh, that's good to know.
I also met with Kenneth Ritchie a couple days ago and sent this very file stating my concerns in hopes that part of that will be brought into that conversation on Thursday.
Barbara, do you have the time and location for that committee meeting
It will be here at 3 p.m.
on Thursday?
Correct.
Is there an opportunity for public comment at those meetings?
That is up to the chair of the committee.
They do allow it. They invite you sometimes, like Barbara said. So, I'm very interested in the roundabout. And another resident expressed a strong concern for the canopy loss in order to build that roundabout. And it's true, all those mature trees are probably going to be destroyed in order to build the roundabout. And she argues that the roundabout doesn't necessarily improve the conditions in that space. And so I'm curious if that interchange or intersection has a history of crashes that's inducing this investment to put a roundabout in.
If I may, I think city staff will comment on the roundabout change during staff reports, maybe later this evening, is that right?
We can address it now if that's preferred. I mean, the design is finalized, and it is not in a position where the design can be changed at this point. There are separated bike and pedestrian facilities behind the curb on most transition points of the roundabout, some conversion to a multi-use path, but they are all located behind the curb.
And Ms. Godwin, this is a part of the larger, I guess, improvements being made to Blunt Person, is that correct?
This is under the umbrella of the Blunt Person project, but it is a separate project on its own.
And it does, I believe, extend those facilities, behind the curb facilities, where there aren't any now, including part of automotive going up towards where Raleigh is. I don't know how far it extends. And then in front of the gas station and the properties on the north where the sidewalk is it's fractured. Where the sidewalk is fractured. I mean, I share your concerns about Brookside. I think we really should look at it as an opportunity for change and improvement. I haven't looked at the details of the finalized roundabout plans, but I think even with the roundabout being finalized, going to the meeting on Thursday with the concern, and I think it is shared by some of the neighbors, which is why it went to council, that they don't parking was a solution that wasn't necessarily asked for. The problem was with high volumes or high speeds of traffic. And so I think there are different ways of looking at it. And I'm hopeful that just the time that it is taking council to get to this point and that it is in committee tells me that there may be an opportunity for receptive ears. But I agree with what you were saying.
I did want to mention that as part of my like punkish attitude, I heard the city of Raleigh say we can't do anything else but put cars on the street. So I have started to connect conversations to activate areas along Brookside Drive in that northern area. I am trying to find ways to bring more pedestrians and people out of cars to be there, because I believe the first part of traffic calming is telling cars and the people within them that there are no cars on this road because there are people outside of them and milling about just happy. No cars. What a sight. If only. But there are many things kind of being folded into this right now that I am really trying to get city help with to guide everything through. So,
Well, back to my question. Is there conditions that are requiring the roundabout construction? Can we not get the behind the curb multimodal path and pedestrian and cycling paths without the roundabout?
We don't have that information right now. You made it the request. We've reached out to our partners in engineering services that are the ones that have project managed, that went through the design iterations. We haven't had time they haven't had time to get all of that information together. I believe what we were going to hopefully state later on is that we heard you, and it's going to come to you in a future update, because we are not the ones managing that program, and we rely on our partners in engineering services to provide that. But we'll add the crux of why this is coming as something that we asked for them to provide us so that we can share with you all.
And Mr. Shoemaker, correct me if I'm wrong, though, this is happening after prior public engagement and work on behalf of...
Absolutely. There's been a handful. I have a number in my head. I don't know what it is, but there have been years of engagement and a lot of the concerns about safety. They did bring up that this is as close to a Dutch-style roundabout that we can get here in Raleigh. So there's a lot of really positive active transportation things. It closes the sidewalk gap on Brookside that exists today. So there's a lot of really positive active transportation things that are being wrapped up into this project. And again, my partners in engineering services know the details in a lot greater detail than I have today.
Ms. Bravo-Taylor?
Just for my clarity, so the roundabout sounds fairly final. What was the status of the rest of the Brookside that we had looked at? I guess that was the part of the project that my understanding wasn't moving forward.
It's going to TNT on Thursday for
Still in
council.
committee.
It's
okay.
out of staff's hands. It's a council decision. They need to provide direction to staff.
It was my understanding that what we saw, which was a citizen-led concern about the speed on Brookside, that was not part of the roundabout project. Right. Now, they might touch one another, but those are separate. I don't know if they have been merged at all, but I believe that they are. And that,
These are two
might be
separate
part
topics.
of your challenges. You want it to be looked at holistically.
Ms.
I
Wallen,
agree with you.
I'm sorry. I think you showed up tonight ready to talk about the roundabout, but then you realized it was a part of a larger sort of issue with Brookside Drive and what's happening there, which is, again, that's still in committee.
Not our committee.
Not our committee.
Council's
No,
committee.
it's at a city council committee, transit and transportation. And again, it'll be presented there this Thursday at 3 o'clock. So opportunity for further public comment and engagement with the Brookside Drive, and I guess if you,
It sounds like an opportunity, if public comment is going to be taken to perhaps involve, I'm assuming that the neighbors that were originally part of petitioning to have something done, not necessarily parking, hopefully they will be in attendance as well. I haven't seen, I live near you, I haven't seen it on the neighborhood listserv.
Yeah,
So,
I haven't heard a neighborhood peep out of it, which is,
yeah, I know there were a good number of neighbors on Edmond,
yeah.
and that was the origin of the request.
if I could ask perhaps BPAC to look into that document, particularly the slides that show the communication outreach efforts from the perspective of the parking division. It goes side by side with responses from my husband. He got the letter about Brookside Drive parking proposal, but I didn't. So that's just one strange oddity of it all. But there were a lot of discrepancies about equity of outreach even. And I think this highlights it in a way that is hard to deny. Thank you.
I'd love to see it. Could that be shared with the commission?
Thank you, Ms. Wallen. I mean, I think it'd be great to share that with the entire commission for review, but I'd love for Mr. Thomas and Outreach, if you could take a specific look at that issue of how outreach was conducted, I guess, through the parking department of Raleigh Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comment from our public?
Hello, everyone. My name is Quan Yu. I live in East Raleigh now. Today, I am bringing on a topic which is pretty coincidental that both things that I want to talk about has been covered. One is particularly the 700 sections of the St. Mary Drive, and the other one is the parking that's going to be putting along that. I understand from the previous bikeway/resurfacing project, the design that was shown on that 7 section was keep a current and then Shero, which fine, I can understand not putting a bike lane there, even though you're building a bike lane from Brooklyn up, but you don't really give people a safe way to get there, so that kind of sort of eliminated the purpose of building that bike lane over there. But that's not a part I'm talking about. Today I'm talking about specifically, which is not only not removing the parking, but also extended the parking even more northbound toward the Brookside intersection. Yes, there is a traffic light that I control, but as you gear northbound on St. Mary Street toward the Brooklyn corner, the road also narrow. If you ever been on that road, you know the road definitely narrow. And now you're putting park car, and then bike lane and car and a bicycle all together. And that, unfortunately, I just don't think it's safe. Even myself being a very capable on-road rider, I probably would also second guessing myself traveling up that particular line, even though there is going to be a really beautiful protected bike lane that you're going to be building for me. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment from the commission?
Yeah.
Ms. Gallenbeck?
Yeah, I'm a little confused because I hear him talk about added on-street parking, and I'm surprised to hear that. Is that accurate, that we're going to be increasing the on-street parking on St. Mary's?
Yeah, with the evaluation, with the bike lane stopping at Brooklyn and starting going north, the expectation from a bike lane connectivity is to route people Brooklyn into that neighborhood and then on Boylan, which is a much lower stress street. There's stop signs, lower volumes, whereas Peace is above 6,000 with a relatively high speed limit. So it will be connecting the neighborhood bikeway that's about one-ish block over to those protected bike lanes so that you can go north up towards Wade. With that assessment, after not removing based on feedback from the local businesses and where the bike lane started, stopped, and with the reworking of some of those pedestrian crossings with the 2 added raised crosswalks that are going right there, just north of Brooklyn and then up closer to Clay. There was that gap of about 1 property where parking was restricted due to the old crossing patterns, and I believe the parking division is proposing about 5 spaces back on a block face where currently there's a share situation again, but the wayfinding and everything the route is getting you north of that. So there should be no conflict unless you are traveling or riding on Peace Street.
So we're redirecting bicycle traffic to Boylan Avenue? Is that what I heard you say? You're going to redirect
It's up to
them
you
through?
it's up to you as a rider. You know, there's no facilities on Peace, so if you want to continue, there's not going to really be a change in your experience. But from a network connectivity, because we could not get the bike lanes all the way down to Peace, we felt that looking at the network as a whole, getting the jog to Brooklyn and over to Boylan gets you into downtown, it gets you up to Fred Fletcher Park on a much lower speed, lower volume street.
Mm-hmm. So you're just giving that mode of travel options.
Exactly.
So therefore, if you're not familiar with those small residential streets, you may stay on St. Mary's.
Certainly, but we are, as part of neighborhood bikeways, we are looking to increase our wayfinding to make sure that that is a very well-signed route so that if you are unfamiliar, you can get there, but you know, it's up to you if you want to ride where you want to ride.
Just curious, but have we implemented any neighborhood bikeways with wayfinding? Do we have any examples of that?
We do not have any updated wayfinding that's currently on the ground, but that's something that we are working on.
And we don't have a projected time of when that's going to be available for the public.
Not at this time, but it's something that, you know, we definitely want to do rather soon to connect into this project.
And does this committee get to review the plans for that plan, that updated, the neighborhood routes?
I guess that was part of the plan that we presented, where we connected everything in. I guess with the previously, what is going on the ground, I don't think we outlined specifically that 5 spaces were getting placed back. I don't know if we knew that at the time. It was through ongoing communications, but the infrastructure that was presented to you and the committees and the configurations of where the bike lanes start and stop has not changed whatsoever.
Sorry, do we get to review like the signage and intent behind the neighborhood bikeway program when that's more developed?
So certainly
or
we
before it
can
goes on?
provide a concept of what that will look like. The signage itself is subject to MUTCD regulations, so there's not a ton of flexibility on what that would look like.
My concern is
So it's
that
those same blue signs that we have elsewhere. It's not, can't be updated much from that. Is that what I'm hearing?
We don't have a mock-up currently of what that will look like, but that's something that we can bring back at a later meeting.
So my concern is that the St. Mary's runs along Wake County Public School campus. And so to me, it's a safe routes to school environment. I really praise the city for taking the initiative to create safe spaces to enable the student body to be able to cycle instead of driving a car. I challenge us to recognize those particular streets that do run along campuses as different from other streets in our system and a part of the Vision Zero. And to be adding, you know, I remember the results from the public engagement, and one of the questions was, you know, what do you think is needed? And parking was on the list. I'm you know, paraphrasing the question. And parking was very low, had very low need. And so to me, I'm wondering, why are we increasing parking, on-street parking, when the public stated pretty clearly that that was not a concern for them? And if you're providing this on-street parking, then you are inducing drivers' ability to, hey, you know what? It's easier for me to drive than it is to ride a bike. And the whole thing of inducing ridership is to create that environment where you meet the general public's majority comfort level. I don't know if we're going to achieve that with this mindset to keep accommodating drivers. So, yeah, I challenge.
Again, this is
Change.
on tomorrow's consent agenda. This is in District D, so I think the best thing we can do is reach out to our city councilors and ask them to at least, let's take a little bit more time to review this before just, signing off on it.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion, Brian. I also am really familiar with St. Mary's and the Cameron Village condos, and they put their waste cans out for service. Those waste cans are often on the sidewalk. Sometimes they're in the street. And if you're putting a bike lane in this space, how are we going to ensure that the waste cans are not blocking that mode of traffic? Because if they were in the street where a driver was traveling, I'm pretty confident the city would respond. But I think it's important for us to have that on the forefront of our minds when we're moving forward. How does the Transportation Department communicate to the Waste Management Division how important it is for these cans, once they're serviced, to be placed in a location that isn't impeding our mode of travel?
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck. Ms. Stern?
Sorry, I'll just jump on this bandwagon because I think adding the 5 additional spots doesn't make any sense just because there's room to add parking. The 5 more spaces, 5 more opportunities to get doored when people are going to ride on that street because part of a bike lane is there. So I just wanted to sort of agree that just adding 5 spots is actually a bigger deal than you're making it seem.
Yeah, and I want to point out, too, we do not know when those wayfinding signs are going in. We just don't. Right? So you're building something today that isn't ready for the public in that capacity because we don't have the wayfinding signs to redirect them to roads that are safer if they're not familiar with them.
Could there be clarity from staff on, I guess, the effort made to coincide these two projects, the wayfinding and the changes happening to St. Mary's? I mean, I know there's not a timeline currently available, but I mean, it sounds like there is an effort being made to correspond.
It is one of those things that this is resurfacing, so this is outside of our typical standalone bike projects. One thing that we do understand is the importance of wayfinding and connecting for those that don't live in the area, because we want everyone to feel like they can leave their house or stay in an Airbnb or just get dropped off and bike safely and choose those routes. So one thing that we have discussed is that with future iterations of projects, making sure that we fan out kind of like a tree with every standalone bike project to connect out into the neighborhood. So there's a logical termini and begin point with every one of our projects that would take it past the core scope, but it would add a minimal cost to add a whole lot more visibility. We're not at that point now, but that's the next step in how we vision future bike projects being put on the ground to make sure that we're not just building infrastructure on an island, we're showing how to connect to and from.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Ms. Bravo-Taylor?
I just wanted to say connected or sort of related to both of these, to your point, Mary Jo, they are both along, they're both roads along, both Brookside and St. Mary's are along public schools, and they both feel like instances where we sort of gave a lot of feedback about wanting more pedestrian and more cyclist-friendly infrastructure, and we always get pushback because we don't have connections, and it just feels like if we don't put in our infrastructure now, we don't get the opportunity to make connections later. And so the chicken before the egg kind of question, I really feel like bike lanes should go on both of those roads up and down, and that you figure out where the parking or how we connect to them later, or that's sort of, I'm sure, a part of what you're studying in the bike plan, but it feels hard to hear not just our committee, but a lot of people from the public have those specific concerns too, and that the connection point keeps being where we get pushback. And I don't understand how we're going to get to that connection if we don't put in the infrastructure and when we have the chance.
Thank you, Ms. Bravo Taylor. Ms. Goodwin?
Yeah, I don't want to be repetitive, but a question in terms of wayfinding. Is it possible we can see what options are available for the wayfinding? Because if they're restricted by standards, we might be able to choose an option that is more palatable and easily to see or navigate versus just the standard ones we have now, because they're not effective.
So if you look in the MUTCD, they do have a menu of options that is basically what we're going to have to choose from. They're going to be very close to what it is today. They've expanded a little bit, but as a whole, they're going to be very much like street signs that you see today.
But there's still an opportunity for the commission to review those options.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Before we implement anything, we would want your feedback and your eyes on it.
Is there an opportunity with the neighborhood bikeway to sort of re-emphasize that signage with sharrows on those roads?
Absolutely.
Lighting.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think maybe some of those options would be helpful to know, like what the city feels it has the capacity to do.
And I will say that this is a little bit of a working vision. We are constrained by budgets just like everyone else. So as we fan out, anything that isn't part of our core need is taking money away from a different core need. So we need to strike that balance. But ultimately, our goal is for every single neighborhood bikeway to be very well signed, very well marked on the street, and then implement strategic traffic calming as needed. But again, that is an aspirational vision of where we need to go, and it's about making choices to get there. And then while I'm still talking a shameless plug, please participate in the bike plan update, because everything we're talking about is either not on a priority project list, which is why we're pushing back, or we're doing this through annual resurfacing where we are within their scope, not what we would consider a scope with the bike plan project. So keeping those constraints in mind, but again, shameless plug, please help us work to prioritize good projects so that we can get the connections that we deserve.
And just quickly, as an example of this, Brookside Drive is slated for bike lanes and facilities. I mean, per the current bike plan.
It is our
but it's not been
long-term bike plan.
But it's not been prioritized.
But it's not on our project list, so Barbara and myself have no authority to move it up and jump the X number of streets that we've been telling that we're going to work on. And it's a policy decision that we can't break, but it is a council decision. But then also we're going through a bike plan update, so we're getting new projects, help us prioritize and find the projects that matter.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Any further comment from the commission?
Is this survey that you were referencing just moments ago, was that put out a while back, or is this new?
Upcoming. So
Oh,
with the,
upcoming.
Yeah, with the steering committee, just met with the bike plan update. So there are going to be multiple
Okay.
community touch points. So it's ongoing, and then hopefully adopted, probably in the next year, 12 to 16 months, where we have just another 1 to 2 years left on the existing bike plan. So it's going to be a plan that we want to hit the ground running. So again, help us pick good projects and prioritize good projects.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. This might be a good time to transition to our first presentation of the evening. Unless there's further comment here. We have one more. We have one more public comment. Thank you, Mr. Tong.
I had a quick comment about our favorite intersection, Atlantic Avenue and Whitaker Mill. I know this group has talked about it before. I've been here for that. But it's been a while, and I heard some rumblings recently. I think, in May, a woman was hit at that intersection, broke her arm. And I know there's always been talk about a grade separation there between, I think it's Dock 1053 and the new Ironworks development. I have concerns about grade separating pedestrian facilities for a lot of reasons, but either way, that's probably a ways down the pipe, I think. And that intersection just to me is like a ticking time bomb. Every time I drive through there, I have actually run through that intersection. I will never do it again. It's really awful. I mean, you've got the skew, you've got the super elevation of Atlantic Avenue, which provides visibility issues, no crosswalks. I think the signal timing probably is not intuitive to pedestrians or drivers about who's gonna kind of get the permitted left turn, that sort of thing. are there any plans that staff can speak to?
We
for
are
immediate changes
actively
there? Okay.
working with the developers to come up with a couple options. It's a difficult process situation where it's development, and instead of development working from the inside of the apple out, it's kind of leapfrogging. So there's gaps in the system, which is growing pains and very unfortunate. But we actually had a meeting to review some potential options that the developer has also kind of started looking at. So, I mean, I can't really speak to timelines or what that looks like because it's still very much in flux, but those conversations are absolutely happening because as we agree, something needs to change there to increase safety for all.
Mm-hmm. Is, as far as you can tell, would probably that step involve improvements at the intersection with like striping and signing and
Everything that we've talked about is signal timing and striping and curb ramps and ADA accessibility. The ramp, or not the grade separation that you reference, is completely a private endeavor that we would have to permit through encroachment, but that is funded and installed and constructed by the developer, and the timelines are up to them.
Understood.
So we definitely want to look at on-the-ground crossing safety improvements from a city perspective.
Ms. Bravo Taylor?
I just would like to encourage the city to push the developers to think about that project scope, including sidewalks on both sides of Whitaker Mill up to the connection at or I guess it's
Wake Forest Road?
Whitaker Mill up to Wake Forest Road to sort of connect back into 5 Points, just because that whole stretch is extremely treacherous as well. And again, sort of where do you dump people and into
People
a ditch?
are already doing it.
Right. Oh, yeah, I walk it all the time,
mean,
and
I
I'm
do it
only
too.
okay because I know the timing.
Okay, we're running. Isn't the S line also coming through that, adjacent to that?
Adjacent, yes.
Ms. Alley, and then Mr. Tong.
Just a plug for these commission members and for us to consider the bike ped ramifications of things like the UDO, right? You know, one of the reasons that it is so dangerous is because sidewalks aren't required when you retrofit buildings, certain buildings of a certain size, and this is something that came up when we were talking about the Kmart site out on Western Boulevard. So I would just put a plug in again. As we modify our UDO, that there are opportunities as our urbanization gets into these more industrial and more suburban areas. There's a loophole that you could drive a truck through, but you can't walk through and you can't bike through it. So there are ways for us to attack this problem, both from a public infrastructure standpoint and from a regulatory standpoint.
Thank you, Ms. Alley. Mr. Tong.
A couple years ago, I know Ann Conlon mentioned that there was a plan to study walking and biking on Atlantic Avenue in that area. Did anything happen with that plan or study?
I guess, do you have?
There's a project in the works north of the Crabtree Creek Trail to connect up to the existing project that's under construction north of Wolfpack Lane and Highwoods Boulevard. I don't know if that's what Ann may have been referencing.
And I do have a comment on the above grade, is that what you guys call it? The pedestrian bridge?
Yeah.
I did swing by, I was inquiring with the condominium and building, and they said that according to them, that there is no intentions of building it, that it was part of their conceptual drawing, but that they are not. There is no plans to build that pedestrian bridge across Atlantic Avenue. So I don't even think we should reference it anymore because it's not on their docket. But yet, it's still a high priority for the city of Raleigh because the residents are already visiting that space because of the commercial services that are there. So it's all a good thing except for the way that we're upgrading the public space so that all modes of travel that are going through that space are going to arrive safely to their destinations, be it home or to the small businesses and supporting our local economy.
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck. Mr. Caruso?
Yeah, just a quick question. I assume the answer is no, considering the crosswalks weren't required at Whitaker Mill, but are there plans to signalize Wicker Drive? I know that turning movement can be very bad especially the left turn movement from Wicker on to Atlantic. So are there any plans to signalize that intersection?
I think we'd have to look at the TIA. I mean, my guess, no, I'm not going to conjecture. I don't know. We can get back to you.
You don't know of any active plans? Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's good to see you. With that, I think we will now transition to our first presentation of the evening with Ms. Godwin, Bicycle Pedestrian Program Updates.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Barbara Godwin, Transportation. I'm excited to be here tonight and provide some high-level updates on some different things that we're working on in the Bike and Pedestrian Program. So we'll start with some project updates. I'm going to jump straight into our South State Street Bikeway project, give a little bit of background here on what we've done so far with this project and the timeline for implementation. So we presented a preliminary concept back in May of this year and released an online survey to get feedback from the community on our proposed design, which was a two-way cycle track between Bragg Street and Bunch Drive. Once the survey closed at the end of May, our team did more feasibility work. In addition to some consideration of all the feedback we received, we began drafting updates to the design over the summer. So currently we're in the final comment period and working on updated design to finalize the design this fall. Hoping to get this project out for bid in, a typo here, winter of 2025. Winter of 24 is over, and get the project out to construction in the summer of next year.
Wait a minute, winter of 2024?
That was a typo.
No, you're good. It is winter 24, right? You're talking about this winter coming up?
We're hoping to bid the project out after the new year. So
because you have their summer 2025 construction begins.
yes, so bid it out for construction, and there's a wordsmithing.
The winter after January 1st. Okay.
Apologies for the confusion.
Yeah, I got you. The season goes over.
12 months from now, construction will begin.
Correct. That's our goal. So here we have a cross-section, two cross-sections of our preliminary design that we presented back in May. So again, the initial presentation of this concept was really done, very high level and conceptual to offer the community, a visual of what this could look like. But feasibility work remained, and that's what we worked on this summer. So initially, we had proposed a cycle track between on South State Street between Bragg and Peterson Street, retaining parking on one side of the street, and then moving south along the corridor connecting underneath Interstate 40 over to Bunch Drive, a cycle track that would just retain driving lanes throughout the corridor. So here's a snapshot of some of the results from our engagement. So about 59% of our respondents currently visit the corridor for a variety of reasons. About 32% live adjacent to the corridor, 15% live on the corridor, and 2% work adjacent to the corridor. So we sent mailers to the project corridor, and 2 blocks back, we sent mailers to both property owners and residents. So even if the property owner does not reside at the location, the resident of that location received a mailer. On the right here, we have a little snapshot of just some of the high-level feedback that the survey produced through community engagement with residents in that project area. So we had a large number of support for the project as proposed. Moving forward. So this is a good summary here of some of the engagement feedback that we heard. So I noted, we had overwhelming support via the survey, but we also had a lot of conversations with residents and folks that worked on the corridor regarding some concerns around the project. So some of those include speed and safety, ability to maintain the facility once it's built, frequent dumping of trash and other litter along the corridor, the type of delineation that would go into the buffer zone in the cycle track, some stormwater and flooding concerns, and then on-street parking impacts between Bragg Street and Peterson Street that would be result of the cycle track. So here I want to talk a little bit about some of the design considerations and trade-off that staff really took to heart as we were reviewing both the feedback but also the very real existing conditions of the site out here. So we considered all these different trade-offs, and ultimately there were many changes that needed to be made in the design to balance both stakeholder needs but also feasibility concerns as it relates to what's currently out there now. So a big feasibility challenge that was realized was that the initial bikeway proposal and existing transit corridor interactions would be very frequent once you get south of Peterson Street, and very difficult to address without exhibiting major costs and therefore expanding the cost of the project quite a bit. So we do have a transit route that runs along this corridor with very high usage amongst its users. This route is also turning into a high-frequency route, which means 15-minute intervals of service stopping here. And that is at 3 different transit stops along the corridor. So again, the ability to maintain ADA accessibility is very much a priority at those stops, and created some very challenging work around the design and the cost. Additionally, because of these transit stops, there would be a big consideration to the consistency of how our bikeway would be able to be delineated. Additionally, we have been in conversations with our stormwater colleagues about the incorporation of green stormwater infrastructure along this corridor, and that's really to help address some of the stormwater and flooding concerns that we heard a lot about from the community. So with all that being said, we made the decision that with this updated design, we'd really like to consider shifting the cycle track to the west side of the corridor. There's no transit stops south of Peterson Street, which creates more of a fluid and consistent buffer zone and ability to properly delineate the cycle track. There are more connection points along the west side of the corridor. There are 2 schools, the Walnut Creek Wetland Center, and a connection north of Peterson Street to the Little Rock Greenway Trail. Additionally, shifting the cycle track to the west side of the corridor allows for the inclusion of green stormwater infrastructure at a later implementation phase. So here we have a design consideration for Bragg Street to Peterson Street. So in our engagement with residents along the corridor and folks that worked along the corridor, on-street parking was a very large concern of the scope that we initially proposed. Additionally, there were also a lot of comments around speeding, and in order to relieve the concerns of both on-street parking loss and speeding, we proposed including a neighborhood bikeway through this part of the corridor with the inclusion of lowering the speed limit, stops located at Peterson Street to transition out of the cycle track, and speed cushions along the corridor. We have 3 different speed cushions proposed, where this arrow is seen on the right side of the screen. That's really to help manage and maintain slower speeds. This is an example of what that would look like between Peterson Street and Bragg Street. So as I mentioned earlier, there are currently no transit stops located on the west side of South State Street between Peterson Street and Bunch Drive. So by switching the cycle track to the west side, we were able to ensure the viability of this project moving forward while maintaining all current access to our transit stops and not having to exhibit any type of significant construction at those transit stops. So this slide here gives you a visual of what the green stormwater infrastructure could look like on the south side, or excuse me, the southern portion of the cycle track. So we have a real opportunity here to address a lot of the issues that were raised to staff regarding stormwater and flooding concerns in partnership with our stormwater colleagues. So this gives you an idea about what that future buffer would look like. Will alluded to this earlier, but we would be looking at doing a phased approach here, getting something very tactical on the ground and coming in at a second phase and installing the GSI. This is just a visual of kind of the corridor as a whole and what's around it. So you can see the green line between the 2 red stop signs is our cycle track corridor, and those transit stops that are located along that portion of the project. moving north, you can see our speed cushions proposed between Bragg Street and Peterson Street. Those connect into some existing traffic calming projects that already incorporate speed cushions with sharrows and a neighborhood bikeway concept. So be consistent with what's north and what is west of the project. So next steps for South State Street, we do have an active survey for the final design comment period. Includes updated design that I've shared with you here and information on the design changes and why these decisions were brought forward through this survey. It's open through August 31st, so there's about 12 days left in that comment period. And this is a link to the public input page if you're interested in garnering more information on that. So I do have a couple more slides. I don't know if y'all would prefer that I pause here for questions since that was a lot of information, or I can.
Yeah, let's stop here for a moment. Thank you, Ms. Godwin. Ms. Alley?
Thank you. I appreciate the responsiveness to the community and being very context sensitive block by block. If between Bragg and Peterson we're going to have sharrows, I think we can acknowledge that less confident road users or cyclists are going to use the sidewalk perhaps. And I was wondering, when I zoom in on Google Earth, it looks like, but maybe not for all of them, that there are ramp-type driveways where the sidewalk surface is continuous going over them. There are a fair number of driveways. There aren't any on the east side, but I can understand why you don't want to switch east to west. With the exception of perhaps fairly recent, the Hope Center has a drop-off lane there, and I was wondering if there were any opportunities for us to stripe those driveways. Building a ramp-type driveway there would probably be quite expensive, but if we can't have a premium facility in the road, can we make sure what we have behind the curb is as safe as possible?
That's something that we can look at. It would certainly drive the cost of the project up, but something that we can investigate.
Yeah, I think fortunately it looks like most of them are ramp type because it looks like maybe there was a sidewalk that was put in and some patching that happened. But I think it would be great, you know, the ideal would be ramp type driveways. But where we can't get those, making sure that that conflict point is clearly delineated with, you know, high vis crosswalk, even where it's crossing a driveway, making sure that there, for example, like, is there a stop sign for people coming out of that porte cochere? Because it's a pretty big conflict point. So that's it.
I also have some inquiries. Yeah?
Thank you.
So speaking of turning it into a bikeway, I did notice that the images you guys had for the speed bumps looked like they were those speed cushions, right? So that does really kind of enable a cyclist to be able to go through that space, which is nice. Is it possible to also include a raised crosswalk where I noticed the Go Raleigh bus stop is, south of the one intersection? I'm not sure what the top one was. In order for us to create this to drivers, that you are entering in a mixed-use space, and the raised crosswalk could be also used as traffic calming speed thing. So I just wanted to ask that question.
Peterson?
We can look at that, but I mean, Peterson, where the crosswalk is going to be under stop condition.
Yes, and then south of that, there's another one on the west side.
We'll take a look.
It was in the middle of the block. I mean, it was, so anyway, I just
we can definitely take a
wanted to
look.
talk about raised crosswalks. I know that Sean Driscoll has mentioned his interest to increase the number of ones that go in.
So,
I think
I will say immediate concerns are, Barbara touched on this a little bit, but a big reason why we switched were the transit stops on the right side. An option to design around that is to do the ramp ups where it extends the curb out so it remains ADA compliant. The issue with this area is the flooding. And so if you put in the style that Sean has been putting in, it concrete gutters the gutter and then you put a cap on it, so it really restricts the flow that gets clogged, and in an area that has history of flooding, brings up a lot of concerns.
Okay.
If you have enough money, you can do anything, but
Yeah, that's true, too.
It's not I'm very concerned with the budget in this specific area with the specific needs, but we'll be happy to take a look at it.
I do have concerns for the management of stormwater in that particular area, but, throughout Raleigh, because we do know from the media that slower storms are going to be rolling through and water is going to be very destructive in the future. But it does lead me to one of the comments that you made, Barbara, about the southern section after the wetland, Walnut Creek Wetland Center, building the bicycle lane and then putting in the GSI. And I thought, well, with the construction of the GSI, will that impact the use of the bike lane?
While that is under construction, yes. But our goal was to go ahead and get an iteration of the project on the ground, to demonstrate proof of concept and use, and then come back later and add the more permanent infrastructure.
But, and forgive me, but for continuing the conversation, the stormwater management has been their top priority in this neighborhood. And I remember community engagement prior to the pandemic, when State Street was designated to receive a bike lane, the community said, we really want you guys to focus and spend the money on stormwater management. And I just kind of battling with appreciation for putting the bike lane in, but then we can't use it because the stormwater management is going to obstruct it. And why don't we just go with the GSI first and then put the bike lane in second, so that we're not taking something away? It's a sequence that once it goes in, it's in, and the public gets used to it, word of mouth gets around, and the system is in place.
That is certainly an option. I think the trade-off is that there would be significant timing delays and when the cycle track would actually go on the ground, probably 2 years from now instead of next year.
And to add to that, that is absolutely a concern that we have brought up and we have discussed internally. But it's also GSI is a not a small fiscal impact, not a small cost to install. So we don't want to go out, change the cross section, go ahead and put that in there, and then realize that we've created issue X. So a lot of this this phased approach is allowing us to get a proof of concept, as Barbara called it, let people use it, let people feel it. We'll see if, and this is a relatively low risk. There's not a lot of development out here, but make sure that we're not creating a conflict that we did not expect. And then by having a lower cost proof of concept, we can see it, test it, make sure that it's good, and then we can come back in and do the long-term permanent, more expensive fix. And so with this GSI, like as Barbara alluded to, there's going to be a 1 to 2 year design time as we've coordinated with them. But it's also, we want to make sure that what we're putting down actually works in the real world and not just on a plan sheet. By striping it, letting people use it, letting it feel it, we are going to have those growing pains of taking and then giving away during construction, and that's something that we definitely want to talk about, how to work around and minimize those impacts. But it also ensures that when we put the GSI in, it's in the right spot 100%. We don't have to come back and do anything else with it.
Will the GSI go in a different location? I don't understand what you're gauging by putting the bike lane in first.
So the GSI is going to go in the buffer space between the bike lanes and the vehicular travel lanes.
Right, I saw that.
And so the intent is to make sure that the new cross-section where the bikes go, where the cars go, it's not creating a conflict that we consistently see. I don't know what the conflict would be, but somebody parking in it or somebody dropping off or there's somebody leaving the road here. We know that we shouldn't put GSI. We need to put something else there to stop that behavior from occurring. It's just making sure that the cross-section that we're applying is actually going to work for everyone and not create a maintenance issue or create a conflict issue.
So the bike lane that's going down is just going to be paint?
And strategic flexi posts.
This will also be an interesting place to look at.
I wanted the silence to really impact everybody's thought process. Thank you for explaining everything well.
I think looking at this as a, for bike lane maintenance and keeping it clear, if this does, I don't know if the road itself floods, but you know, the debris and where it settles when you put in the speed cushions and where you might want to put in any kind of like curbing or flexi posts and see, I mean, it seems to be reasonable. Where can you do this in a way that minimizes maintenance for street cleaning?
Well, I think that's part of it as well, because part of the design is to be making not necessarily street cleaning maintenance, but there's GSI maintenance.
Yeah.
So understanding where those truck pull-offs are going to be. So it's going to be making sure that we design those truck pull-offs so that they're not overly impeding the cycle lanes, they're not impeding the traffic lanes, so that the workers out there are safe. So it's going to be us testing out all of these different loading zones, all of these different maintenance zones to make sure that it works in reality and not just on paper, and then coming in with that major investment to make it permanent.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Ms. Godwin, you want to proceed?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple more slides for you. So left off here, just briefly wanted to reference some active neighborhood bikeway projects that we are kicking off as part of our 10-year priority project list, Dandridge Drive and Watauga Street. We are working on the preliminary design for both of these and about to kick off engagement through public input, and we'll be coming back for an update on those later on this year. Lastly, I wanted to briefly highlight a map here that shows a lot of the active sidewalk projects that we're working on. So you can see here on the map, there's a variety of projects that are either under construction, in design, or projects that have been funded and are waiting to be pivoted to a different phase. So a lot going on. Definitely want to share more about this. We are working with our partners in roadway design and construction to get updates on all of these projects, and want to be able to share that at a future meeting. We did not have enough time to gather that information last week, so just wanted to provide you with this snapshot of projects, and can also send this list out via email after this meeting.
Can I ask a quick point of clarification? On your map where it says funded, in design, and under construction, should we assume that if it's in design or under construction, that it is at least partially, if not wholly, funded?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So that was our update on some different projects going on. Now I'll touch on some planning efforts that we have talked about pretty much monthly at this point. So our downtown mobility study engagement for the first portion of that study closed on July 31st. That was our first round of engagement, but we will have more later this fall that will be through an online format rather than an in-person event. So we're currently working with the consultant team and members of the project team to continue reviewing this feedback that we've garnered since May, and working to blend that with a technical analysis of our downtown corridors. And then lastly, I'll touch on the bike and pedestrian plan update. So currently, we are very much in the early phases, visioning, goal setting, existing conditions, analysis, and review. We had our first steering committee meeting last week. Ms. Stern and Mr. Caruso were privy to that meeting and are on the steering committee, and we thank you for that. We'll have our next meeting in October, and we'll be having our kickoff public open house likely in November of this year. So a lot more to come on that, but just wanted to share some brief highlights of kind of where we're at, what we've done with the steering committee so far, and some immediate next steps. And then just a quick snapshot of the different web pages. If anyone wants these links, you can grab them here. I can share them with you after the meeting. These are all on our public website, the City of Raleigh. That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Godwin, I have a question about the steering committee. Were you able to invite the Safe Routes to Schoolway County staff?
We were, yes.
Did they attend?
Yes.
And how about Oaks and Spokes?
Yes.
Because I recall discussing the possibility of attending as a Safe Routes to School program coordinator, and I don't remember receiving an invitation to it.
Okay, yeah, so we did send an invitation to Oaks and Spokes and asked them to appoint, the members that they would like to serve, and
did they?
Same
Okay.
with the Wake County Safe Routes to School program.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Godwin. Any further?
Just very quickly, can you go back to the slide with the sidewalks? I just want to check one thing on that, the sidewalk map, yeah.
Lots of colors.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. I got it. Yep.
Is that big yellow strip in the northwest part of the?
Glenwood.
Yeah, that's Glenwood. Okay, and what part of Glenwood is that covering?
I can't quite see the project boundaries, but I can provide that in a later update.
Thank you. Any further comment, question from the commission? Hearing none, I think we will proceed. Ms. Godwin, thank you for all the updates on our bicycle and pedestrian projects and ongoing planning. We'll move forward with reports. I'll kick us off with a brief one for the chair's report coming off of our holiday in July. There's not much to share here. I did have a chance to sit down with Ms. Godwin recently to get caught up to speed on our various projects, but other than that, not much to report here for the chair. Up next, we'll go with Planning Committee.
We did not have a meeting last month, but if there's a good time to have a touch point about downtown mobility or the bike ped plan, we would like to hear an update at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Tong. Policy?
Yeah, as Ms. Godwin mentioned, we had the first meeting of the Active Transportation Steering Committee last week, and the Policy Committee met before this meeting, and we discussed kind of a number of items related to that plan update.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Mr. Thomas with Outreach?
I did not meet, but I have a question. We had worked on a sort of a value statement preamble to the active transportation plan, and I'm not sure where that is. Was that incorporated in the active transportation plan at all, or do we need to present that to BPAC, or?
We can present that to the steering committee.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
That's
Thomas.
all I had.
Staff reports.
So my report tonight was covered during our public comment session, addressing some comments at the Automotive Way Roundabout project. Additionally, there's some project updates in your monthly memo that was included in the agenda packet, but that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Godwin. Do we have comments from the board? Perhaps Mr. Smith?
Yeah. Last week, a year ago, I went to my first meeting in Raleigh after having moved down here from DC. And the meeting I went to was an APS meeting, Accessible Pedestrian Signals. It was in the conference room up on the third floor, and it was chaired by Jed Niffenegger. And I came in about a year after these meetings started, and he put this meeting together with members of the blind community, and they were pushing to have more APS installed in the city. And like I say, I came in the middle of it, but after about a year of going to these meetings, I've been really impressed with how the city has responded to the blind community's just basically showing interest in the blind community's cause and conditions that blind people find in the right of way. And Jed has been just a really forthcoming and eager participant in these meetings. And the city, I think, now I don't have the numbers, maybe Will, you can tell us, basically, the city's really accelerated APS installation over the last year and found some money to pay for it. And even with the almost complete lack of cooperation with NCDOT, they've managed to get quite a few intersections signalized. And if if you don't realize it, that makes going out in public possible for a lot of blind people. If there's no APS there, then if you have no eyesight at all, then you're counting on listening to traffic noise. And Raleigh has, almost 700 intersections, signalized intersections, and maybe 100 of them are done. So, and there are a lot of places where there's an APS, but 3 intersections in any direction around that, there's no APS. So if you were to somehow materialize there, you could cross safely, but once you move on from that intersection, you're pretty much done. There's still a lot of things to be done, and like I say, there's so many state owned roads and intersections in the city that even if the city decided they were going to do all of theirs, there would still be, a couple hundred intersections like that in the city. And I just wanted to express my real deep appreciation to Jed for, and having done this for 25 or 30 years, it's rare to find somebody who gets that engaged and excited about it and is that forthcoming. And I really look at him as a partner, and I think it's a great credit to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for that recognition of Jed Neffenegger and all of his work in expanding our APS systems across the city.
Well, we will absolutely let him know, because I mean that's going to make him giddy. I mean, it makes my heart happy to hear that we're having that positive impact, and I'm just tangentially involved with the APS system, so we will absolutely let him know. Thank you for those comments.
Any further comment from the commission? Ms. Gallenbeck?
Yeah, I wanted to bring attention to Reedy Creek Road. There's bike lanes on both sides of the road, and one side the grass is growing so far into the bike lane that only 50% of the bicycle pavement marking is visible. So I thought maybe this is a good time to bring that up. Is there any way that maintenance could go out there and trim back the grass so that cycling on maybe the north side is safer? And then on the south side, there's a big construction going on at the corner of Reedy Creek Road and Edward Mills? No, Blue Ridge. And it's generating a lot of debris. So when it rains, the rainwater is moving the debris, the dirt down, and it's collected in the bike lane. And that forces all of the bicycle riders to enter into the driver's lane. So I thought maybe I'd bring that to your attention.
We'll work with our private development inspectors specifically for the construction site to make sure that they're street sweeping as appropriate, and then we'll reach out to the appropriate folks in street maintenance to either notify the property owners of their lack of maintenance or get a crew out there. So we'll take that.
So the stormwater is moving the dirt at least a city block away from the construction site.
Yeah, that's well.
Just to let you know.
I'll get the private development inspectors who look at all that stuff to take a look.
Thank you.
As a similar plug, if you see that, it could be an illicit discharge. If you search illicit discharge on the city's website, you can submit those tickets because we want to keep stormwater out of our storm pipes. So just as a general PSA, if you see, not necessarily private development, but if you see anywhere in the city, it looks like not stormwater is getting washed down the into our system, submit an illicit discharge ticket, and they can go out there and research and try to take care of that.
Great.
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck. Mr. Shoemaker. Mr. Thomas?
A couple things. Number one, I'm getting reports from community members that the bike share system, the bikes are not being very well maintained or in good working order a lot of times. So I don't have firsthand experience with this, but I want to pass that along from community members. There's some concern about keeping them in usable order.
And then I want to ask again about the Hillsborough Street bike lanes. A citizen shared a picture with me that was confusing. It looked like there was a sharrow that had been put down in the motor vehicle travel lane, which we had discussed, but there was a solid line between the motor vehicle travel lane and what was the bike lane in the door zone. And so I thought we had discussed putting a dashed line there to indicate that bikes were able to travel freely between those two areas of the roadway. And I'm not sure kind of what's going on there, and it was confusing. So I'm just asking for an update on that project.
We will bring back an update at our next meeting on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas and Ms. Godwin. Any further comment or question from the commission?
I have one.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I wanted to bring to your attention, and I know this has probably been up for discussion in the past, Six Forks Road south of 440. I don't recall the name of the street. Ramblewood Drive is the first street that comes out south of 440 on the west side. And the next street down, that's where the sidewalk stops. And there's no sidewalk from that point to Anderson Drive. And I'm going to guess it's 300 yards. It might be 400 yards. There are trees right up to the road. I can almost guarantee you that somebody said, let's put some sidewalks in here, and everybody in the community said no, because we don't want you to cut down 100 trees. Still, there's a large number of apartments down there. There's a whole neighborhood full of residents. They're building things on the other side of the street. Both of the crossings of 440 on Six Forks are frightening. And I just wondered if any discussion is taking place about what's going to happen in that section from Anderson Drive to Ramblewood Drive. And really the Six Forks from St. Albans south, if that's something that's being discussed or looked at. Or
So from a macro perspective, absolutely it is. The hope and the expectation is that the Six Fork project, that was the previous bond that just got the cross-section approved, that would extend all the way down to probably Wake Forest and beyond if we follow the comp plan. So there are, to my knowledge, no immediate plans coming out of our group that would look at that. But definitely from a city's perspective and planning, revamping that whole corridor to have consistent vehicle lanes, cycle lanes above the curb, and sidewalks is something that the city visions and wants to see there.
I know it's a sticky wicket. It's a hard place to work
Yeah.
with.
There's a lot of topography, too.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Well, if there's no further comment from the commission, we will now hear any upcoming events the commission would like to share. Mr. Smith, perhaps you've got?
Yeah, I mentioned this a couple of meetings before. On October 15th, the North Carolina Council for the Blind and the Triangle Federation of the Blind are sponsoring a march from Art Space on Davie Street up Blunt Street to the governor's, to the executive mansion, and then over to the legislature. We're having a proclamation from Governor Cooper. We've asked him to present it in person, and we're waiting to hear on that. At least a couple of senators are going to be there. We're expecting 3 or 4 dozen people, blind and otherwise, walking up with their canes on Blunt Street. I met with the city's taking part. Christina Bowman has been working with us. We walked this section on Friday to take a look at it. I asked her to ask you guys to do some things for us before October 15th, and we'll see what happens. It's a pretty good stretch to walk. It's pretty flat and level, and there aren't really too many trip hazards, but there are a couple. And then there's no APS. There's 6 intersections, and there's 2 APS. So we've got like 45 blind people who are going to be walking down this road. So if you guys could pull a magic APS or two out of your back pocket, that would be a great opportunity.
We'll talk with Jet, right? Yeah, he'll knock it out.
Well,
You've got till October.
well, I mean, you ask and then you hope. But we will be doing this every year, so this will be a recurring thing for us. And I would like to invite the commissioners to attend this and show support for this. I think it's going to be a pretty memorable day, and we've been working really hard on it, and there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. It should be a very photogenic day, a good day to talk to some people if you want to get some perspective about what it's like to be blind and walking around in Raleigh. That'd be a great opportunity to do that. So I welcome you, and I will welcome you that day if you let me know, and we'll make a special fuss out of you being there. So, thank you very much. And
What day is it again?
Tuesday, October 15th. We're meeting at Art Space at 9 o'clock, and we're marching up to the Legislative Building. The presentation there will begin at 10.
Awesome.
Thank you.
What legislators will be there?
Senator Grafstein, and we hope Senator Blue at least.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
I have a save the date.
Miss Goodwin?
Okay, great minds think alike. We are planning very hard for our Crabtree Avenue Greenway opening, and it will be held on September 14th from 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. We'll have food trucks. We are encouraging cyclists, pedestrians, walkers, runners. It's going to be a great day to open that side of the Greenway. So please come out and support. September 14th, that's on a Saturday.
What was the time again, Ms. Goodwin?
8:30 to 2 p.m. and the address is 5171 Glenwood Avenue. That's in a parking lot.
Thank you.
And this will be an opportunity to learn more about Frog, too, am I right? Friends of the Raleigh
Yes,
Greenway?
exactly.
Okay, so, yeah, learn about Frog.
Love it. Any other upcoming events from the commission? Well, as a reminder, we do have the Transit and Transportation Committee meeting of council happening this Thursday, the 22nd at 3 p.m. Here in council chambers for anyone who might be interested in coming out to advocate for Brookside Drive and other related projects. I think with that, we'll wrap up our upcoming events, and I'll just again note that we have a friend of our cycling community in the hospital having had sustained injuries from being hit by a driver this Sunday afternoon, so we wish them all the best for a speedy recovery. And again, it serves as a reminder as to why we do this work in concert with our colleagues on city staff, in concert with our public, to make our streets safer for everyone who's trying to make their way, navigate across the city with other means outside of a car, right? So many thanks to all of you on this commission for your work, for your time, your energy, and your dedication. And with that, I will confirm our next meeting, September 16th, 2024, 6 o'clock here in council chambers. Thank you and good night.